Thank you for joining us for another edition of Operation Tango Romeo, the trauma recovery podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. Today, I'm reaching down south and got Chad Bruckner on the line. Chad is a guy who's a bit of a kindred spirit as you go through his LinkedIn profile. Dude is busy. He's got a lot going on, his fingers in a lot of pies, and is also in the world of peer support. He's a military veteran, a police veteran, and like so many of us, when we get out, we find ourselves seeking ways to continue our service. And typically that service is continued within our community, just like I do with this show, and just like so many of my guests, if not all my guests, do when I bring them on. And there's something special about that. That need to serve, that need to have an impact and try to make the world a better place and just have some significance in your life by trying to lift others. So I reached out to Chad, and here he is. Mr. Bruckner, thanks for joining me, brother.
Oh, Mark, brother, thanks for having me on, man. This is great. What a great intro. And yeah, I was just listening to the words you were saying about service, about purpose, and I'm like really listening to what you're saying. And it's so true that for all of us, once you're in those service realms and you come out of it, you might not even realize we are just preconditioned to find new things to serve or influence others. So I think it's pretty neat that people like us find each other, because even though the service is over, it's not over for us. So we're still have, mountains to move.
Well, I think it's folks like yourself and myself and so many others that I run into that are faring the best. I was injured with a post-traumatic stress injury in a war zone in 94. So 30 years ago this year, this summer, because it was a summer tour, April to October. And here we are in April.
Wow.
And last Wednesday was the 30-year. So just a couple, what day is it today? I've lost track. It's Monday. So,
Right.
so last Wednesday was the 30-year anniversary of when my friend Tom Anderson had his legs blown off and lost his eyeball. And he's still fighting with Veterans Affairs today, 30 years later. I mean, he's well looked after, but but there's still confusion and not sure if everything is as it should be, and still has to prove his legs haven't grown back every year. You know, 30 years, and yet, my God, it's so crisp. Like you'd think things would have faded. Nope.
Yeah.
Nothing has faded from those times, and it was 30 years ago. But those that don't find some way to serve, they don't seem to fare that well.
No.
I watch them struggle. Is that what you find?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a prescription for any of us. If we're struggling, it's like you got to find somewhere to serve. You got to find somewhere to insert yourself, to be important, to be impactful, to keep your mind at bay. Because I think we all know so many of those. I mean, I spoke at a suicide event on over this past weekend, and one of the things I said was I've been to so many funerals of soldiers and cops that were killed in battle, killed in action, but I've been to more funerals, 120% more, 200% more of soldiers and cops that took their own life. So this misnomer about being heroic and saving people and putting ourselves on the front line and doing all these great things, that's great. But we never stop to think about that cost on the back end, which is a much higher cost than the cost of serving in dangerous environments. I think it's that idle mind, that idle soul, when it sits around with nothing to do, no wars to fight, no people to save, and you have all these memories and trauma and things you're thinking about. I just think that's such a scary place to be in. So yeah, I think you're right. I think we fare better when we find things to do, when we find passion projects, things that really move the needle, and we find a way to inject ourselves into it and find a way how we can be useful to move that further.
Well, so many of us hang on to what we were as opposed to creating what I am now. So what I mean by that, motorcycle groups, that have veteran all over their vest, and I'm not making fun of it. It's cool. I ride with a group like that every year. doing this big relay thing, and everybody's got veteran patches on their jackets or on their motorcycle vest. But so many people, that's their entire identity of what they were. They
Yeah.
don't have an identity of what they are now.
Right. And
And
they're still living in that past. Yeah, they're still living there.
they don't fare well.
Right.
I mean, you acknowledge the past. It's always going to be a part of you. Like, you're never going to be the you pre-service you. You'll never be that person. And that's okay. You're a stronger, more resilient version of you. But what are you doing now? Like, I can't remember the last time I sat down with somebody to tell old stories, unless it was people that I was actually in a combat zone with, then we'll talk about those stories. But
You're hitting and you're hitting on the head. I appreciate you saying that. I was just talking to a veteran about this. We're talking about this offline, you and I. Storytelling is phenomenal, empowering. It's incredible. But if we're living in the past with the stories and we're telling the stories to people who weren't there, do we need therapy? Is that why we're saying it? Do we need connection? What is the reason we're telling the story to people that weren't there? What is the intention behind it? And I found just a lot of the brother. And you know what? I'll just say from my experience, I have come from a place where I was telling stories to people who were not there. Now I'm in a place where I have told all my stories from the past. I either use them now to help people overcome, to at events when I'm speaking at events, and obviously form a connection, help people, influence them and inspire them to overcome their stuff. But telling stories to people in the past to get over the pain or to feel connected to an older life, I don't need that anymore. So I'm glad you said that. And I think that's we can maybe help veterans understand is, that was a time and a place. And if we're still telling old stories, that could be a first red flag or sign that, we're not where we need to be today because we're telling stories about yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, how's that saying go? Like, the levels of conversation. If you're talking about people, let's gossip. That's the lower level. If you're talking about things, that's like, hey, did you see this new truck or the new motorcycle that came out? That's another level of a little bit level higher. It's better than gossip, but the highest level is talking about ideas and concepts and where are you going and what can we actually do. But the best thing is actually taking that highest level of conversation and turning it into reality.
Mm.
Having that good idea and doing something with it. But it doesn't have to be grandiose. Like, you don't have to be Elon frickin' Musk,
You're right.
Something as simple as volunteering at the food bank and putting cans on shelves. That has changed people. I've watched it change people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the pride of knowing that you're truly serving your community. We have, so I'm in the province of Alberta for all of my international listeners. And what an amazing province. We're like Texas North. So if you're going to cross references with a U.S. state, we're very Texas-ish.
Ooh, I like Texas.
Yeah, Texas is a good place to be.
Everything.
And barbecue. We got the beef, they got the barbecue. But here, the veteran community is incredible. We have a place called the Veterans Association that has a food bank, and this food bank it's branched out. We're in two of the major cities, which is Edmonton and Calgary. They're both 1 million person plus cities, and Lethbridge, which is much smaller, like, I don't know, 60,000 or something like that, just a guess. But this food bank is at each major location, and it's popping up in other locations as well, because there's a need for it. And so for any Alberta veteran, if you're not feeling so good about yourself, if you're ruminating on the past and you don't know what to do, volunteer anywhere. And it doesn't have to be at this organization, but man, it feels good. It feels good putting those cans on those shelves. And I've seen the pride because it's the sense of contribution, right? And they know that they're helping others. Or be the delivery driver. They have these hampers of food, and they get a lot of people, they don't have transportation. So the hampers of food get delivered, and it keeps them going. And I know people personally that survive off of these hampers. And without it, especially with our inflation going through the bloody roof, they simply would not survive. One friend of mine, his budget is down to $20.
Wow.
a month.
Wow. Wow.
No, that is tight. Like he knows where every freaking penny, and an extra jar of peanut butter would throw him off, right? And without the veterans, and the veterans, I hooked him up with the Veterans Association, so they're providing a couple $300 of groceries every month, and so that he goes from $20 of wiggle room, which is no wiggle room at all, to $200 or $300 of wiggle room, which is still fuck all, but
Yeah.
it's something.
Yeah. Wow. Though, man, so many people are struggling out there, Mark. I mean, my God. I'm going to tell this story because I never really told it. But you just talked about a food pantry, and I think it's when 2020. I was working as a cop in 2020, and 2019 I went to a work event. My mental health. I was coming up at 20 years of government service, so 13, 8 in the Army. I ended up doing 13 as a cop, so it was probably year 20 of that. So I left in 2021. So I was really dealing with a lot at that time, and some of it I understood, and some of it I didn't. And to get to your point, I was looking for a connection of service. I was an active duty police officer. I served in combat, was a military veteran. Now I'm a police officer. Was a detective. Was an undercover officer. Was an expert in multiple areas. Like I felt connected to the community and service. Yet in 2020, I was emotionally and mentally not my best self. Then you had the George Floyd riots and all the anti-police stuff in 2020. And there became a point where I found myself as an active duty cop with all this seniority messaging the food pantry we had in town, asking the executive director, she knows who I am, if I could come in and volunteer on my off days at the food pantry. Don't tell anybody about it, blah, blah, blah. So I come in during 2020, the height of COVID, May or April, June, maybe June. I got the mask on, I got the hairnet on, I got the gloves, I got the apron. I'm back being an undercover officer. I'm just not working in an official capacity. I'm in this food pantry in my own town that I'm working as a police officer, anonymous. I didn't tell anybody who I was. The director of this place knew, but like the staff working, the volunteers that day, I just had my head down. I was just craving, and I was serving. I was in the community as a police officer, and it still wasn't enough for me. It wasn't enough because I was just starving for. I think I was starving to look people in the eye and have that connection, because I would end up serving some of those people. I did multiple days, multiple shifts, and it got me through that time that I needed it. And I would see people that I had arrested, people that I just knew of and knew their problems in the community, but because they didn't know who I was behind the mask, it was felt so good to fill their grocery bags with food. To when they say, hey, can I get a loaf of bread, or can I get a second loaf? And I'd say, yeah, no problem. Don't tell anybody. And I'd throw a second loaf in there. They didn't know who I was, but it felt so good out of the constructs of my job, out of the duties of service and police officer, and what you can't do, what you can do. Man, it felt good to be freaking anonymous. Sit there. You wanted a second loaf? Sure. You need some cans of food? Sure. Like to just feel connected to people outside of the uniform. And it was amazing. It really did a lot for me. So piggybacking on what you're saying, Mark, is like if you're feeling lost or disconnected, it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter how much time you already spend doing something. Like find a way to make yourself feel better about what you're doing in life. And for me, I needed to, even though I was serving, working full time in the community, it wasn't enough at that time. I needed more because I needed to feel connected to the citizenry, the residents, the community. I needed to be reminded that I'm the same as you and you're the same as me. We're all on this boat together in 2020. So yeah, it's just a great thing, man. We all have the abilities to do as much or as little as we want to do, and it really comes down to free will and making the choice. And if we can find a way to make less excuses, take more action, I think we're all going to be a little bit more happy and joyful.
Another type of veteran are is the adrenaline junkie, which was 100% me. It still is to a degree, but not not like it was. And part of that is because I'm 54 now, so I got to slow down sometime.
Yeah.
Unless I'm on my motorcycle, then I'm a complete idiot still. But man, I used to climb the radio towers. There's one that's 750 feet tall in this one town, and I've been to the top. That was before I joined the Army. I did that as a kid, right? 750 feet.
Desire to get it out, right? This energy, high energy.
Well, it's what I found is that it's a trauma symptom, right? to get that high, or to for me, I've always had something in me to take a bite out of life, you know, and so, something I wish I still had that as much as I used to. Every morning I'd wake up and how can I take a bite out of life today? How can I get the most juiciest bite out of life? And what can I do today?
Hmm.
And I'd freaking find something. And my friends would always be like, let's go hang out with Marcus. He's fun and he does shit that nobody does. Like taking a canoe to the top of a ski hill in the middle of the winter and going down the ski hill in a canoe.
Oh my
You
God.
know, my friends all thought that was a hoot, and we used my canoe. You know, stuff like that. It's just it's fun and can also get you quite dead. But do you run into that type of veteran as well, or has that been you? Have you chased that dragon?
I kind of yes and no. I don't think I'm an adrenaline junkie. I don't like heights. I don't like jumping off cliffs. I'm actually probably the opposite of that. But what I am is what I've learned is I am a passion junkie. So I
Mm,
cannot do anything. I mean, you could put $1 billion in front of me, Mark. And I don't say this lightly. I don't say people have friends of mine have argued me with this or debated, and they think I'm crazy. But I know myself. I know myself. It could last for a little while. All this money, you put $1 billion in a suitcase and ask me to do the most mundane job in the world. It'll last for a little while, but I can tell you right now, there will be a point pretty quickly that I'll look at that suitcase and contemplate, man, should I
not
give
worth
it?
it.
Yeah, should I give this back? Like I'll start the thought process in my head. Should I give this back so I can go do like? And people might think my friends would, that's insane. Like, go do what you want to do, but that's just
I
how
get it.
I'm wired, and I learned that about myself. So I wouldn't say I'm adrenaline, but definitely passion. You know, like I just am struggle to take jobs or do things that are just don't invoke my soul or wake me up. And consequently, when I'm in those roles where I'm challenged and my passion's being illuminated and a big spotlight's on my soul. I mean, man, I will go 100 million miles a minute. I will go a million miles an hour. And it'll take a lot to kind of stop me. Probably my own self, my own failings will be what get me to stop. But so yeah, I think passion for me is kind of my substitute for adrenaline.
That $1 billion suitcase is an interesting thought experiment. Also I've learned who I am over the last few years. It's a big part of recovery. It's essential. It's a pillar of recovery. Is that self awareness, and also and part of self awareness is being able to not hide who you are, but that $1 billion suitcase, there's the self-sacrificing part of me that would be like, okay, I'll do this horrible job that I absolutely can't stand for as long as I can stand it, so that I can take that $1 billion and not just go buy a fleet of jet skis or whatever, but so I can do something with it. So if I can help people with that $1 billion in that suitcase, I will suffer on this assembly line job, which is like my version of hell. But I'll do this assembly line job for that $1 billion for the service of others for as long as I possibly can. And then once I can't anymore, I'll tap out and I'll feel terrible that I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. It's funny. I was cleaning out the garage last past week. I was sweeping it out, and I had this fleeting thought of I was thinking about this about like helping people money, and I said, man, if I could get a way to make enough money to literally like almost budgetize and just merely satisfy the things in my life I need and want, because I kind of know what those are already. So I don't need, this boatload of money that everybody seems to be, or most people seem to be just chasing and chasing and chasing. And then I can take the rest of that, all that money I earned, and I can literally, I was in my head thinking about this. I could go donate this, I could go help this group. And like, those are exercises I was sweeping and that was such a healthy exercise for me. It made the time pass, and it was like thinking about others and how to enrich others with money. And it was just such a cruel place to be in, almost in this little fantasy dreamer world of just passing the time. But so I resonate with that, Mark, tremendously. Of like, how can you use your gifts and abilities to help others? And I learned this from my dad. Actually, I have my own podcast. I asked him about this on a podcast. Does that make you selfish if you want to help other people? And to hear his response as somebody that was went through a lot of childhood trauma and a lot of hardships as an adult. when to hear his response and say, no, of course it doesn't make you selfish. I spent a lot of time, he said, I spent a lot of time myself reflecting on that. And if you're constantly doing good things for others and it makes you feel good and makes them feel good at the same time, how can that be selfish? That's the ultimate human desire, I believe.
I have struggled with that question, and here's where I'm at with it. Goddamn right, it's selfish, and it has to be, right? It's the old analogy of being on the plane and the oxygen mask comes down, right? What do they tell you? You put it on yourself first. Otherwise, if you pass out, you can't put it on anybody else, right? How do I look after how do I love and care for my children if I'm dead? I can't, right? So how do I not get dead? Well, I got to look after myself, and that has to be number one. And I still struggle. My wife is fan freaking tastic and helps me with the self-care, because I avoid it. I avoid self-care. I self-sacrificing like that, maybe still struggling with, do I deserve it? I feel selfish if I look after myself and I can't.
Do you think that's your veteran ethos, your ethic? Like, where do you think that comes? Because a lot of us are like that. Is it you're always so focused on serving others that you just forget to make time for yourself?
Probably that's a part of it. Trauma from my first marriage is a chunk of it. I used to get punished for doing anything for myself, anything, and told that I was a bad husband and a bad father, which are the two worst things you can possibly say to me, right? You're a bad husband, you're a bad father, because what's more important in this world? So that cut right to the fucking bone. And I don't think I'm over that. But my wife, I'm in my second marriage. We've been together 10 years. She still likes me. It's kind of great. And might even stick with me for another 10. But she has to kick me out of the house to go on a motorcycle ride, because I'd be 10 minutes and 5 minutes into a motorcycle ride going, I think I'm a piece of shit, because I should be at home doing something instead of tooting around on this motorcycle. It's so hard on me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I struggle with that, and I find that there's a lot that do, but you have to do it anyway. You have to recharge your batteries, or you're freaking useless. If you don't look after you, you can't look after anybody else.
Yeah, and the burnout is such a real thing, and I think you get burned out. If you don't have that self care, and I went through that for sure. And I was the same as you. As I was at 17, so I'll even go back further. Growing up, being the oldest of three kids and experiencing some financial hardships when we were kids and young, I had this just kind of off the bat this indoctrination into, and I had great upbringings. I'm not negative about that, but this indoctrination of.
I was going to ask you about that. So you had a great upbringing?
I did, yeah, great upbringing. Some hard times, but yeah, a lot of values, a lot of love. So I feel like the hard times were accentuated with life lessons. They were backed up and supported by, values that almost illuminated how you get through a hardship, if that makes any sense. So
the reason I'm sorry, and I really apologize but this is where I got to stick this. The reason I was asking, and the reason I was thinking before, is I would have guessed, and I would have put with 80% certainty that you had a really rough childhood, and this is why. U.S. Military is freaking awesome at keeping stats, right? They got a stat for everything, and they have a really good psychological profile for everybody that's joined and why they joined. Like, they're good at that. Mm-hmm. And what they found is that those who choose a life of uniformed service, whether it be police, military, EMS, whatever, have a high ACEs score. So ACEs is adverse childhood events, childhood trauma, right? And with few exceptions, the higher your ACEs score, it correlates to the trade that you chose. So you and I were both infantry. So across the board, and when you're with your troop mates or platoon mates or whatever, you start hearing these stories that of abuse and of your platoon mates, right? And you're like, wow, is this everybody? Is this like the whole world like this?
Right.
Because you're in an environment where the ACEs scores tend to be very, very high. And we've heard these stories from those that we served with, right? And then if you go special forces, it's higher again, like tier 2, tier 1 units across the board. They had a fucked up childhood, and so the high level of service that you are continuing with, very, very similar to my profile, right? I would have assumed a whole lot of childhood trauma, but I guess not. You're the exception, not the rule.
Well, yeah, maybe I'm putting a positive light on things, but yeah, I mean, my parents are still married, very loving. My dad grew up a lot of trauma, physically and sexually abused as a kid, from like 4 to 12. His mother took his virginity, so he wrote a book on it. Just a lot of pain.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, a lot of pain and trauma. And
Okay, Oedipus.
so yeah, so I grew up with seeing my dad, seeing the negative fallout of that. So I never felt like anything was done to. Here's to summarize. I don't feel like in my childhood I never had any direct experiences, but it was riddled with secondary traumatic stress. It was riddled
Yeah,
with watching people go through really hard times
that makes sense.
consistently, freaking consistently. So I don't feel as a victim, quote unquote, but I do feel like there were elements of my childhood. And again, I say it was a glorified childhood, playing, catching lightning bugs, playing in the street, playing wiffle ball, playing football in the basement with everyone in the neighborhood, staying out till midnight playing capture the flag, staying up late doing movie night, watching wrestling on TV with my cousins and brother, like amazing memories. But there were some hard times, and having the milkman come over and or having the electric guy come over to shut off the electric, and my dad, him getting in a fight in the yard and watching that, we had a milkman when I was growing up, and having the milkman, not having money to pay the milkman. So,
Or was the milkman your dad?
no, it wasn't my dad. Rosenberger's was the company. I had a business now, I believe. Rosenberger's, but it was an amazing little company. They would have the little refrigerated milk canister on your front porch, and they put the milk, glass jars of milk. This is the early 90s, and then seeing the bill in there was past due, and then my mom, I guess, I don't know how we didn't get milk from the milkman. She had to figure another solution. So just a lot of those kind of messy experiences, hearing the arguments, being the oldest kid, knowing what's going on. I mean, I wasn't an idiot, so they did a great job of buffering as best they could as parents, what you should do. But of course, I was privy to that. So the fallout to some of that was me wanting to sacrifice for my siblings. We didn't have a lot of food in the house in my high school time, and I started working young, and there was a period, I don't remember, a couple of years where my father was on this medication binge where he's trying to figure out his meds, and he was on lithium, and he didn't really need to be on lithium, but back then he kind of just trusted what doctors said. So he didn't get out of bed for like 2 years when I was in high school. I would go to school when he was in bed. I come home from school when he was still in bed, and that was just my life and normal. I didn't realize that was kind of an abnormal thing. So,
Yeah.
so again, it's almost like you don't know what you don't know. And then I would not eat lunch for like 2 years of high school. I would give all the lunch money to my siblings if there was lunch money, or if there wasn't, things like that. So it was just, again, just being a good leader, being a good person, trying to work through problems as a family. Again, I never really felt like it was a hardship. I just felt like that was life, and you don't really know what you don't know until you get to become an adult. You realize that some of those experiences were where they were challenging, they were hard, they were confusing at times. And but again, I put this light on it, Mark, that I had a great childhood. I really did a lot of lessons that came out of that, because you know why? In the infantry at 17 years old, later as a cop, dealing with people. Actually, a cop was much harder for me, even more than combat, because I was consistently exposed to people dealing with trauma, victims of crime, which in the Army, you didn't see a lot of that unless you're in a firefight, unless an IED blew up on your truck and you're kind of responding or reacting to the event. But there are plenty of days you're sitting around playing spades and dominoes, whereas a detective, you're just, the exposure to victims was higher for me. So again, being somebody that was exposed to secondary traumatic stress as a kid all through my life, I had brought that stuff home with me. I would think about it, I'd ruminate on it. So, it's no wonder by the time I turned 40, after 21 years of government service, my emotional health was, depleted. I had nothing left. I made bad decisions as a result, bad thought process. So I decided to leave policing after 13 years. I just got my master's. I thought I was going to be the next chief of police. And then I found myself not even in the profession anymore in 2021 in small business ownership and as an entrepreneur. And I was like, whoa, what has happened in my life? So, but I think getting back to what we talk about, it's taking those life experiences, always trying to, for me, I always try to put a positive light on it so I can understand it. Because when you go through all that hardship, like you've been through, I've been through, your ability to relate to people, your ability to understand people, your ability to have compassion for people and see them for who they are, like you said, meeting them where they're at, it's a gift. It truly is a gift that I didn't even realize it is a gift. It's like this hokey thing when you're young in your 20s and you just think it's just some weird thing. And then you come in your 40s. I'm 44 now, I'm 43, be 44 later this year. And you realize these are absolute gifts. These are abilities to move the needle with humanity, because you can be in a situation, any situation. You might not know how to get out of it or what to do, but you can concretely know that there is a problem here. I think it's because of X. I don't know how to get to Y, but we're going to work together. Like the ability to kind of triage a situation from just being in so many hardships or uncomfortable moments with humans and conflict and all that stuff. So I think it's gifts for us veterans. We can give back to people so much more if we can understand, get to a point we can heal, recover, and then share that with others, share that with the world.
Brother, I am so happy I interrupted you.
That's good, man. Glad you did. I kept
See, but just look at that. It's why you can't take things at face value. Oh, I had a great upbringing, and then you tell the fucking story. You're like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? You know, you're in the second percentile for childhood trauma. And but oh no, it was Leave It to Beaver, man. It's like, fuck off, Chad. No, it wasn't.
Oh, you know what? My wife.
But there's the two sides of that, right? Like I agree with you. It's good to put, like, you don't dwell on it and oh poor me and you know, and you don't take the victim mentality. Yeah, that's true. At the same time, you have to fucking acknowledge you watched your dad have a fist fight in the front yard. Jesus Christ, you know, and is absolutely 100%. You lived in in a trauma-rich environment. It was secondary trauma from your dad, right? And another way that we call it is the blast radius. So you're always in the blast radius. And what happens in the blast radius? You get a fucking concussion, right? And I'm just going to pause. Are you getting the comments too? Can you read them too, Chad, that are all popping up?
Oh, no,
is that even a button is that a button that you can click?
No, I didn't know we were live. I thought we were just recording something.
Oh no, brother, we're live. We got a whole audience watching this, and I gotta acknowledge some of the folks that are reaching out. Some friends of mine that I served with have been reaching out, and Gil, thanks for sharing, and Christian, thanks so much for sharing. He says, Mark, you've helped me with childhood trauma. Like, I don't know how I've done that, but I'm glad I have. So thanks everybody for reaching out in the comments. Every time you reach out and you put a comment like that for other people to read, you are helping somebody else by knowing that they're not alone. So thank you everybody for contributing in the comment column. Chad, I'm so glad I reached out to you, man. Like, we're already having, I'm just grinning ear to ear because of the quality of the conversation that we're having.
Yeah, man, this is real life. This is real stuff, I think. You know, it's funny, but I mean, these are thoughts that I have. My wife the other night, we were just talking about this. It's almost like this contentious part of our marriage lately where she was lamenting that I'm too positive, that I'm being too positive, too optimistic in situations, and it's just rubbing her the wrong way. And it was like this playful conversation, but there was some element of truth to it. And then you say this, Mark, first time I ever met you on this podcast. It really gets me to be self-aware and dig into this now. You know, am I putting rose-colored glasses on in hard situations? Maybe I am. So, but here's the thing. I recognize situations for what they are. So it's not that I'm naive to everything. I'm naive to some things, but there are plenty of times you're in these really hard situations. I know you've been on them. I've been in them, and a lot of chaos, a lot of noise, a lot of conflict. And it's just, I learn to embrace the opportunity to work through it. It's a blessing.
Chad, you're Ted Lasso.
I don't know about that, but it's a great show, by the way. I love Ted Lasso.
It's a great show. Like, if I could just wave a magic wand and change my personality to be a person, it would be Ted Lasso.
Oh, I watched that show, and I probably smiled. If you had a camera watching me watch that show, I couldn't wait to text friends and family about it. I said, because, and I actually wrote a book last year, and I had a bunch of Ted Lasso stuff was going to go in my book. And first time I ever did a major creative project like that. So many things I didn't think were going to go in went in. So many things I didn't want to go in went in. So many things that I absolutely, this is going to be in there, ended up sitting on the cutting room floor. How is this not in there? But when you put it all together, I learned it just doesn't jive. Everything doesn't matter. You'll have another opportunity to put something else out. So focus on what you're doing here. And but I had so much Ted Lasso because my book was on leadership and organizational culture. And if you watch that show, this is what makes me laugh. It is a work of fiction. It's a work of art. Screenwriters wrote that show, like Jason Sudeikis and other guys wrote that show. So it takes human beings in a creative format to write a piece of art that then people can take that art and say, why are we not running our organization like that? Why are we not leading an organization like this? Literally, these guys sitting in their jammies and sweatpants, sitting around drinking coffee and beers in this creative session, writing the screenplay that now turns into people wanting to say, hey, we got to run our organizations like this. It's just an amazing example to say, we don't need all the money, all the glitz and the glamour. Be a good person. Show up and care. Ask questions about your people. If you know your people are going through a tough time, my God, dig in and find out you can help them. That's your job as a leader. There is no other job you have if you can't even help your people solve their problems. Like, sorry, you're not going to be good at your job. So, so that show just does a great job of just showing on the basic human level. Just care. Just open that heart up a little bit. And care.
I think the perfect man is Ted Lasso, who can go all Sons of Anarchy when need be.
Yeah. He's a good actor, man. I love him. He showed a side in that, like the couch scene where he's laying on the couch, the therapist couch, and you really see this side of him where he's, just as a human that's going. Any human that's been in therapy knows it
he played not a serial killer. He played a contract killer in another show that I just saw recently.
Oh, yeah.
It was convincing too. Like, he was good.
He's good. He's good. Yep. Therapy's not fun. So that was an interesting part of the show when he's in therapy and you're seeing how his most positive demeanor, now he's sitting on this therapist chair as Ted Lasso as a patient, and it's not comfortable going through therapy. So I thought it was a cool part of the show to highlight, like, yeah, therapy isn't fun. It's not attractive. It's not sexy, but it's the most important work sometimes. Maybe not talk therapy, but therapy in general of working on yourself, self-development, self-improvement, that shadow work. So important.
Yeah, it is, man. Some of the comments that we're getting, I just did a speaking gig in front of about 80 or 100 police chiefs or fire chiefs rather. And I really made sure that they understood that in that room, a whole lot of high ACEs scores, because they don't know that.
Yeah.
They don't know that, and they don't know the power of leadership and how to deal with post-traumatic stress injuries. So I was up there, I don't know, hour and a quarter to do my bit. And the things that I talk about when I do a speaking gig, it's all coming up in the comments of how important it is to so people know that they're not alone, that they're not the one-off, And Gil Gilbert here sharing, when you see the live stream on Facebook, whatever, you can read these comments, Chad. It's just, I'm so blessed to have all these people open up. And it's so important because when they do that, somebody else is reading it and they're going, holy shit, me too. And one of the comments in here, you mentioned once in your podcast that the military tends to attract kids of childhood trauma. You help me connect the dots more than anything. And yeah, I mean, that's the power of these conversations, Chad. And you never know what's going to hit, what's important to people, what's going to resonate. You just don't know. So you have these conversations to see what comes up, and you have enough of them, then you kind of learn the common threads and what's most important for people to learn. I did another speaking gig in front of a bunch of doctors, about 80 or 100 of them, and man, they didn't know shit. They didn't know shit about trauma and addiction. And they did not understand that. One of the speakers that came up said that addiction, is it a disease or is it a choice? And I just like, none of the above. It's a trauma symptom. It's the pill that they found that helped them deal. That's what it is. You can't resolve addiction without resolving trauma, or at least having enough tools to manage the trauma. You can't. I mean, this is how they've learned to deal. So if you don't give them better tools to replace those drugs, they're going to stay on the drugs.
Yeah.
You know, that's how, but they didn't know that. And these are the basics. Anybody that works in addiction knows this stuff. Anybody in AA knows this stuff, but they never bothered to ask.
Right, right. Sometimes we don't want to know. Sometimes we don't want to
know. So you started in the infantry when you're 17. My oldest boy is 17, and he's in the reserves in the infantry right now. Wow. In a very, very good unit while he's still in high school. And he wants to test himself, you know, and it's pretty cool. Pretty cool first job. Cool. Why did you join at 17?
I didn't really have many other options. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. I wasn't a great student. I didn't position myself well as a kid to be a good student. So, I mean, it was touch and go there, barely passing high school. My mom would say, you know, a lot of that, looking back on that, was just, you know, I didn't have the skills or tools to be a good student. You know, those are things now. It's cool to be a dad and get to help my kids with the time and attention to help them develop good habits and all that stuff. So, like, I wasn't a good student. We didn't have any money. And I remember the conversation with my dad was, I remember saying something about my dad, like, my dad's friend was Steve. I could work at Steve's gas station. You know, I could work there, you know, get a job there, pump gas, or learn how to fix cars, or, you know, some fleeting conversation that I was not interested in whatsoever. And then my dad was an Air Force vet. So he said, what about the military? And just him saying that was like, whoa, what about the military? Yeah, I never thought about that. So I didn't choose to go in the military until like my second half of my senior year. I was still kicking the can down the road. Everyone else is signing to go to colleges or choosing their college, and I still had no plan. So it was the second half of my senior year I finally committed to go in the military. And I wanted Army infantry, and if I knew I was going to go in, I wanted to do a hard job and something that was.
So why the infantry? Was it the idea you wanted to test yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I in my mind, see, I was still having some insecurities too at 17. So if I was going to do it, let's go in and do it the best and biggest way it could be done. You know, the way I thought about it. You know, I didn't have any mentors, so nobody was telling me about special.
If I'm going to do it, don't do it halfway. That was me at the recruiting center.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was it. Yeah, went in at 17, and you know, it's funny going into 17. I didn't know who I was yet as a human being, as a person. You know, how could who really does know at 17? So I remember going in the Army boot camp, and they're one of the drills they do. You're marching down the field. What makes the grass grow? Blood, drill sergeant. That makes the grass grow. Whatever. And you're doing these chants, and you just don't know any other way. But now looking back on it, I mean, the military, at least in my experience, American military just has thousands of years of tradition and history of developing soldiers to kill or capture the enemy. And they're very good at that job. And I was become a very good soldier and leader. So very proud of that. But what happens is, you know, you get out of the service. It's like, well, who am I? I don't know. They built me up to be one thing, which was great. And now I got to figure it's on me. Nobody's coming to save me. That's on me to figure out who I am as a person. So I kind of went from the military right to police work, had a family, got married. So all these great positive things. But it wasn't until after 40 I started to peel back and say, I need to figure out who I am, because I don't think I know who I am as a person. I don't know everything about myself. I don't really know what I'm interested in, what I'm passionate about. You know, I've thought I was passionate about military, thought I was passionate about law enforcement, and I was tremendously. But those things are fleeting; they don't last forever. So what do you do when the thing that's not supposed to last forever ends? You got to figure the next thing out. And I think you and me are both in this boat now, which is pretty cool.
One friend of mine just commented, "We didn't do a lot of singing in the Canadian military, LOL." And we used to joke about the Americans, because we'd be down at, say, 29 Palms or Camp Pendleton, training with, and the Marines would be watching us train. They're like, who are these guys? And we got treated really well. You know, they were great hosts. But comments from Americans like, y'all don't sing when you run. And the answer, if you can sing, you're not running fast enough.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. Another airborne, when we had an airborne regiment down there, and some of the comments we get, y'all are the best shape alcoholics I ever saw in my life.
Yeah. I mean, drinking culture, man, that's a big thing in the military.
Yeah. Did that ever sneak up on you, the drinking?
Oh, big time. Yeah, yeah. Growing up, I was an athlete, so I didn't drink, I didn't use drugs. And then I go in the army at 17, and I got to Korea at 18, and just was exposed to just this mass drinking culture. Yeah, it was just not a. It's not a. It is what it is. I think everyone that's been in the military knows that.
You got where at 18?
I went to Korea. My first duty station was in South Korea, and
No shit.
yeah, so
감사합니다. 안녕하세요.
exactly, yeah. Oh man, that was. I'm telling you, Mark, I loved it. I sat there at 18 and watched men in their 20s, 30s, maybe even a couple 40-year-olds routinely and consistently complain about where they're at. And I looked around and said, I don't get it. Like, amazing country, amazed. I'm being paid and getting 3 meals a day. I get paid, $600 every 2 weeks. They give me a room. I have a roommate who's cool. No curfew. We get to go out and eat authentic Korean food. Like, my view of looking at the world was so much different than most of these guys I served with. Now, in hindsight, they were married. They didn't want to be there. They're halfway around the world. They had no desire to explore the culture. So yeah, you sit in your room, read magazines all night for a year straight. Yeah, that's probably a kind of a miserable way to live. But yeah, I was out there exploring and meeting people, and it was an awesome time. Awesome time.
Did you learn much of the language?
I did. Yeah, I was good. I could get in a taxi, and I could tell I almost forget now, but it's like Wenchok was left, Odenchok was right, so Chink Chink was straight. So yeah, I mean, I could get in and take me like the fob, the bass. Yeah, it was fun, man. I loved it. It was like, and it was the first time in my life that I left Pennsylvania. Literally, growing up as a kid, we didn't have any money to take family vacation, so I didn't take my first family vacation till my freshman year of high school. We went to the Jersey Shore for a week, and that was like going to, I don't know, Turks and Caicos, or some bungalow overlooking blue water with dolphins that come up and pour martinis for you and pour it down your throat. Like, the Jersey Shore when you don't go on a family vacation is amazing. So I had that experience, and yeah, man, it was the first time though being away on my own, having to do my own laundry, having to just take care of myself, and I embraced it. I loved it. It was first time in my life I actually felt like, I remember many times thinking around, like looking around my barracks room, thinking, you made it, out of there, and you look at your at. Not even that I didn't wanted to go back there. I love my house in my hometown, but it was a cool concept of being in a foreign country so young. And really,
so what was the scope of operations in Korea? Like, why are we still there?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
That was 1953, man. It's been a while.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some economic benefits that South Korea and the United States both enjoy from a result of that. But yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of political questions.
Do you know your military history about Korea?
I got pretty familiar with it. Yeah, I went to the Korean War Museum, learned about the 50 invasion, the treaty signed in 53, just the history between the North and the South. Yeah, I tried to learn as much as I could when I was there.
Do you know that we were there?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, the Canadians, you mean?
I said the Canadians were there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how much about how many units or the size of the force there, but yeah, I did know that.
Yeah, the Battle of Kapyong. You familiar with that?
I'm not, no.
Well, there's one for you to look up. It's a famous one. Okay. If you ever get up to Alberta, I'll take you to the Museum of the Regiments in Calgary. It's amazing. You think that somebody that suffers from combat PTSD like myself would have a tough time there, but it's not. It feels like home. It feels like, oh, this is nice, and I could spend hours there, and I have, and I do. But the Battle of Kapyong, and have you ever heard of the Devil's Brigade?
I have not, no.
Well, there's a movie, The Devil's Brigade, that I encourage you to watch. And it's about the first American Special Service Force. It was created by Canadians.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Canadian produced a film on American military. That's interesting.
It's an American film.
Oh, okay.
It's an American film about how the first Special Service Force was created by Canadians.
Oh, okay. Americans made it by Canadians. Okay.
Yeah, the Americans brought us down, and it's Canadians who were the best soldiers in the world in World War II and World War I. At least that was the reputation, and that was the reputation as per the U.S. Opinion.
I mean, it makes sense. The technology, the ethos and values and geography. I mean, we're all so close in so many different ways. I mean, it makes sense that Canada has produced some amazing fighting men and women, just like the United States has.
Well, that the birth of that first Special Service Force, that's where your Green Berets came from. And then and I've met a bunch of them. And then on the other side is our tier 1 unit, which is JT, and our tier 2 unit, which is CSOR. So CSOR is Canadian Special Operations Regiment, under Can Softcom, and JTF2 is a tier 1 unit. And so they're right up there with SEAL Team 6 and Delta and whatever the other tier 1 unit is. But their heritage is the 1st Special Service Force, which was created in World War II by a joint task force of Americans and Canadians. And it's a great movie. It
Wow.
historically really incorrect, but the general gist of, yeah, there was a Devil's Brigade, but the name the Devil's Brigade was a name given by the Germans because they were just like, who are these freaking demons, you know? And but the entire brigade, as famous as they were, started with one man. And it was this one man that got the reputation of being the devil, and then the entire brigade took on this persona that was started by one man. His name was Tommy Prince. He was from Manitoba. He's a First Nations guy, so a native fella. And the stories of this frickin' guy, he's the most decorated soldier of World War II.
Wow. Tommy Prince. Man, I love learning new things. This is great.
And because he was First Nations, he didn't even get half the medals he should have. So even though he only got half the medals he should have, he was still the most decorated guy. So he would have been double that if he was a white guy, you know, because there's just still way too much racism then, eh?
Crazy. There should be some.
And he wasn't mentioned in the movie.
Awards.
Well, and somebody's mentioned that he was a Patricia. That's my regiment, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. And yes, Gil Gilbert, he was a Patricia, but not originally. He started as a Special Forces guy, and then it turned into the Devil's Brigade. He wasn't a Patricia until Korea. So the guy I'm talking about was World War II, and then again, he was a sergeant in Korea under our regiment in the 2nd Battalion. But that's yeah, you got to watch the movie. It's a fun movie.
Hey, watch it. Devil's Brigade.
And when you see the fight, the fist fight in the cafeteria, or in the mess hall rather, the guy, the unarmed combat instructor, that was from my regiment. The little patch on his shoulder, PPCLI. So when you see the unarmed combat instructor having his fun, just know that's my heritage.
Good to know. That's good.
Yeah, it's begging. I've been trying to get a remake of that movie done, networking with people, and apparently somebody is doing it, but I don't know if it's got across the finish line or not. I've had the daughter of Tommy Prince on this show.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
What was her reaction
Karen,
like?
Lovely. Oh, you broke up. What was your question? What was her reaction like?
Yeah, asking about her dad.
Well, you broke up again, but her reaction to me, well, that's why we had her on, and I had her on for an hour and a half. I had another Patricia there with me, in sort of the studio audience, and my God, we were honored to have her, and hoping that she would really understand just how special her dad is to us, and how she's our sister, whether she knows it or not. And if she ever needs anything, that we got her back, like always. And any Patricia would be there for her if she ever had a trouble with a neighbor or something. Well, she's gonna have a platoon show up. That's for sure.
Loyalty.
Yeah. But the story of Tommy Prince, though, the full story, it's such a common veteran story. Despite him being the most decorated guy in the entire war, he died drunk and homeless on the streets of Winnipeg at a fairly young age. Atrocious. If we can't take care of that guy, what a broken system.
It's heartbroken. Yeah, I mean, we're certainly going down the political road here, but America is no different. That what we're just abandoning so much of the veteran population is just it's marginalized, it's disregarded, and we say that we're taking care of them, but our actions speak differently. It just they just do. They just do. And maybe we could talk about it more. We just keep putting a light on these issues that, that's not okay that Tommy Prince died, drunk on a street. We don't need to blame Tommy. We don't need to blame any of the Canadian government. Like, nobody needs to blame anybody. We just need to come together and say, that's not okay. Agree on it, and then find ways to make sure we don't let stuff like that happen again, because it's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, there has to be outreach programs because a freaking superhero like that, just as an example, but we're no different. I went 23 years without being diagnosed, right? Because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that all the bullshit in my life was because of a trauma injury. I didn't know, right? I didn't realize that my wild behaviors were because of a trauma injury. I didn't know that stuff. And without outreach programs, real outreach, not just call it up. Hey, you good? Okay, next. And because you're always going to say, yeah, I'm good. Of course I'm good.
Yeah,
right?
I'm good. Good.
You're going to get that. Yeah, I'm good from people that have a gun sitting next to them and they're thinking about eating it, and they're still going to say I'm good. So there has to be actual outreach programs where first you're invited. If you don't show, somebody comes up to your door, and hey man, could I have 20 minutes of your time and just sit and talk with somebody that knows the signs, right? And or hotlines like, look, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to intervene. I don't know what to say, but Jim over there, he needs help, and I can't articulate it. But here's what I'm seeing, and here's why I think Jim needs help. Well, go help fucking Jim. Not well. Give him the 800 number. No, don't give him the 800 number. You show up and say, Jim, give me some of your time, would you? Come on, let's go for a walk. Let's go for a walk, Jim. And get him out of the house, and I've done this. I've done that. I know people are stuck. I just show up. And that's what has to happen. But officially, without an official outreach program like that, I'm good. No, I'm fine. I'm good. They don't reach out for help, and they go into the death spiral. And we were talking about the high suicide rate earlier. There's two types of suicide: slow and fast. It's not just eating a bullet. It could be drinking yourself to death. Or skydiving and without checking your chute first because you don't give a fuck. There's other ways to end it quickly.
Yeah, suicide is a tough topic to talk about, man. It's so more pervasive than we want to acknowledge, and I think that's what makes people want to not talk about it. People are dying at their own hands. We can ignore it. We can sit here and talk about it and try to come up with solutions, especially in the veteran first responder community. It's a big deal. It's a real issue. For first responders in the United States, it's not even a comparison. We love to do press releases when a cop gets killed by a bad guy, and it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. But we're not even able to compare. Cops are killing themselves 3 to 4 times as much as the communities and the residents are killing us. That's just a fact. It's a fact. We can deny that because it's not sexy to talk about. It's sexy to talk about so-and-so got killed in a convenience store robbery. Oh my God, we're going to have this procession of vehicles, and we're going to have people holding American flags. Like, that's what everybody wants. I get it. But the real truth of it is, where are the processions for the cops and first responders that complete suicide? Where are those at? They're not happening. Why aren't they happening? Because one moment in time, he took.
And those are the saddest deaths, really.
Yeah, because of one moment.
Like, they're all sad deaths.
Yeah, very sad. And what about all the good stuff they've done? What about all the good stuff?
What about all the suffering, the unacknowledged suffering leading up to it? Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it's a system failure. It's a
we
system failure at the end. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you died, you completed suicide. We're going to punish you again by ridiculing you, by judging you, by not giving your family the death benefits, by not having a procession, by not giving you full honors, by making you just feel like your death doesn't mean as much as somebody who died in the line of duty. Yeah, we do that every day in this society, in this world. And it's time we just stop saying it, man. Suicide, there's a reason why people are in immense pain, hopelessness, and despair. So instead of judging, let's figure out, my God, why, what was so bad? It was their hopelessness. Let's figure out how we can't save this life anymore. We know that. What can we learn for the next situation? There's a police chief in California, Neil Gang. He lost one of his officers in the 90s, Asher Rosinski. He lost him to suicide. He was a combat Marine from the Gulf War in 91. Only a police officer, newly married, an absolute handsome guy. I mean, just perfect. I mean, you just look at him like, Jesus, man, could you have been a little more ugly so I don't have to look at you and feel bad? No, you're actually a good-looking guy on top of all these things. It's like, and anyway, this death rocked Neil Gang to a point that 30 years later, he cannot shake it. He has changed his life as a chief of police, as a city manager, as a human being, as a philanthropist, as a humanist. He has changed everything about his life to say, I'm going to use Asher's suicide and learn as much as I can to change it going forward. Not just accept, oh, he took his life. That happens in this job. You just got to write 10% of us kill ourselves. You just got to write that stuff off. Like, those days are over, you know? So we need to figure out, how can we not leave anybody behind anymore?
It's leadership. And exactly what you're saying of the punishing them twice, right? Basically shitting on the person that just took their own life instead of honoring them. Everybody else that has suicidal thoughts in their head that they don't talk about, you're telling them that they're a piece of shit for even thinking it, for even considering it. You're telling them that instead of, no, like, this is a natural consequence of unresolved trauma. This is what happens when you don't put up your hand, when you don't reach out for help. Eventually it turns into suicidal ideation, and way too often from ideation to practice, to actual suicide. And the only way out of it is to talk about it openly without shame. It's the stigma that's fucking killing people, and nobody creates more stigma than the leaders. When I had a room full of the fire chiefs, this is what I was slapping them upside the head with. You're killing your own people. You're killing your own. Are you in leadership? Are you a first responder? You're killing your own people if you don't talk about suicide without shame, without judgment. If you're not doing that, that suicide, I'm sorry, you contributed to it. It's not your fault. It's not your responsibility, but you did contribute. That's the fucking truth.
You played a part. You played a part.
You played a part, you motherfucker.
Yeah. And
we played a part.
It is. Yeah, you played a part. Yeah.
Yeah. You threw gas in the fire.
I lost a soldier to suicide in 2005. And this is going to be hard for me to talk about. So maybe I shouldn't talk about it, because I lost a soldier to, I'm going to talk, I'm going to be a leader here. I lost a soldier to suicide in 2005. And he was my favorite guy in the squad. And I have never said that out loud. He was my favorite soldier. And you're not supposed to have favorites, but you do. You do. You have some favorites because of their ethics and their ethos and their values, and how they look at the world is through the same lens you look at the world. So naturally, you just find people you love a little bit more than others. That's okay. I had 10-man squad, and he was the one I loved a little bit more than the others. Didn't mean I didn't love the rest of them, and I'm best friends with most of them to this day, because we've been through a hard time together, and that brought us together forever. But when he completed suicide, I felt such shame, because I knew at 25 years old, I was aware enough to know that I played a part in this. I wasn't responsible. I might not even have made his letter, so to speak. But to be naive and think that we don't play a part, he completed suicide and took his life on the heels of spending 6 months straight with me in the squad training for Iraq. So something happened in that time. Something happened. Now, I learned from his family, he had a history of mental health issues. That's fine. I get that. But still, for us to act like everybody was there is like, I remember people making fun of him about his girlfriend. Like, oh, we get back from Iraq, your girlfriend's going to be banging, somebody else, man. Like, because that's how we talk to each other. So could we then sit there and be like, I don't know. I don't get a part of his suicide. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So what lessons can we learn When somebody takes their life that we loved and care about and respect, and they're around us, and we miss them now, and we are yearning for them now, my God, what lessons can we learn? If we're not willing to change and be better people through those lessons, even if we don't feel like we're directly responsible, then we have learned absolutely nothing. We've made it about ourselves and our own insecurities, our own discomfort, our own fears, because we have not committed ourselves to learning as much as we can to prevent the next one. And it's not naive to think we're going to prevent the next one, but my God, we got to put 100% effort in to try to prevent the next one.
I'd like to think that we've gotten better over the last 30 years, but 30 years ago this summer, a friend of mine shoved a grenade down his flak vest and blew himself to smithereens. Kurt Cooper is his name, and he did this in the war zone. So I was in Croatia in '94 during the genocide, the Croatian Civil War, as a UN peacekeeper. And he got a Dear John letter. What a fucking dumb cunt that gave him, wait till he gets home and then break up with him, you idiot. But either way, it broke him, and he shoved that grenade down his flak vest on the other side of the APC to make sure that none of his buddies would get any shrapnel. And blew himself to bits and pieces. And when you really contain the charge like that, it was a hell of a boom. And I went to his funeral service, his memorial in country. First of all, I was punished because for doing it. It's like, well, look, we'll let you go, but you have to pick up 5 extra duties if you go. Okay, fuck you. I'll take my extra duties. I'm not going to not go. So I went. And the attitude of that time, things that I heard, well, he was weak, or the number one that I hear, fucking selfish, right? And I understand why people say selfish, because his pain is now being carried by 1,000 others, and you don't get rid of the pain. You just distribute it and you hand it off for others to carry, right? That's all true, but that's not, he wasn't in his right mind. If you are healthy, you don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a rational decision. And to shit on him after he's gone by saying he was either weak or selfish, what a douchebaggy thing to do. Now, anybody else, like, yeah, okay, there's a difference. We acknowledge that you are transferring your pain to others by punching out. Yes, that's true. His friends had to pick up the body parts. His spine landed on the OP. That's all true. And God bless the guys that were on OP with him that day. I mean, holy fuck, right? I was QRF'd to that call. So for our civilian audience, QRF is quick reaction force. So the immediate response, siren, holy shit, that's me. Grab your stuff, jump in the carrier, and start going off to a certain direction. Because we thought that they were getting mortared, but they weren't getting mortared. He just blowed himself up. But if we treat it with, oh, he was selfish. Oh, he was weak. You are killing the next guy. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be weak. I don't want, and you're going to have guilt for having these thoughts in the first place. I attempted suicide in 2021. Never thought I would do it. I always figured that I was like, yeah, okay, I'm plagued by these thoughts, but I'll never do it. Well, what I've learned is if these thoughts are in your head, especially daily, that's like, like that's a fucking problem, but I did what guys do, especially Army guys. I got it. No, I'm fine. Yeah, it's in my head all day, every day, but I'd never actually do it. Well, I did. I took a freaking crack at it, a legit crack at it. And when I was doing it, I didn't think that's what I was doing. I just thought this would feel interesting, because I was having a psychotic break and didn't know it. Of course you didn't know it. You're having a psychotic break, right? I broke with reality and I took a freaking jab at it. But if you are having the thoughts at all, much less once a week or once a day or all day like I was, stop, drop, and roll, man. You're on fire. You might not realize you're on fire, but you don't got this. You think you got this. You don't got this. You need an intervention now if these thoughts are in your head all the time.
Yeah,
That's my PSA for the day.
Well said, man. Well said. Thank you. Ruminating thoughts is never. That's not a good thing. You got to figure a way to turn the tide. Yeah, great monologue you just said about suicide awareness, man. Screenshot that one because that's important.
Yeah, brother. Let's talk about peer support. One of the best interventions is peer support, and there's I'm very religious about that world because I facilitated a group after I was a member of a group for about a year. I facilitated it for another year or two after that. And I've seen the power of it. People driving 2-3 hours once every 2 weeks just to be part of this peer support group. It saves lives.
No doubt.
And it can end lives if it's not a safe place to land. If your peer support group becomes a place of sanctuary trauma, you motherfucker, you did it wrong.
Right.
And you just killed somebody. So I'm very when I hear peer support groups, I'm like, oh man, very protective of it.
Yeah. I agree.
From your experience in the world of peer support, what are some of the top 3 do's and don'ts from your perspective?
Meeting people where they're at is a huge one. I think that's violated so much by so many counselors, clinicians, people that should know better. And then I've just learned by not being any of those things, like the best way to gain influence is and just build trust is to meet people where they're at. Hey, I think I have a good idea for it, but I can tell you're not there yet. So I'm just going to sit here with you. And it seems like you just want someone to listen to you, then I'm going to listen to you. Or it sounds like you just want to vent and you want to make excuses right now. I'm going to give you 10 minutes and let you make excuses. At some point, I'm going to shut it down and cut it off because that's not helpful. But, I'm also going to let you get that out and let you feel and be however that is for a little bit. I think that's important. We don't let people do that enough because I think people will naturally self-coach themselves out of that. We inherently are wired to want to feel better. So if you give people the space to feel a little negative while framing it that you're here to be their positive solution or help them with a positive, incorporate a positive solution, it's almost like you're building trust by letting them know, but you're putting that pressure on a very safe way that, okay, now it's time to start moving forward and start building a plan together. But sometimes I think we've rushed it too much. Like, I'm here, you got my time and attention. I got to be somewhere in an hour. All right, what's the plan? What are we going to do? And it's like, well, hold on a second. You just already created this hey, man. Hey, sister, what's going on? How's you doing? What's going on in your life? And that sometimes can take an hour. You could be there for an hour before you even get to anything real. And that's what it is sometimes. And I just think we have to meet people where they're at more. And that includes being patient. Some of the don'ts is boundary setting. You have to have good boundaries.
Yeah, man.
You have to
give us an example of that.
And you kind of touched on it with the victimization or the trauma thing is if we are if somebody is sharing their trauma with us in a peer support manner, it is not in a permission for us to start sharing ours. That's not how it works. Being a good peer support officer is being relatable. So finding strategic ways to share your trauma, your experiences is absolutely, that's the creme de la creme of a great peer support officer, using your lived experiences. So I think it's phenomenal. That's the best way to do it. But it's not permission to just like diarrhea of the mouth and tear all the bad things. You're there for somebody else. This is their time. This is their situation. This is their event, whether it's a peer support, a CISM call debrief, major incident debrief, like this is their time. So be strategic in it, share information, be vulnerable, be present. That's fine. But it's all in a way of driving their healing and their recovery. And I've just seen so many situations where it becomes like this, like I'm your friend now, like an hour later, you have been through shit. I've been through shit, man. That sucks. I know what I've been through sucks. And it's like, no, we're here to help them get to another level. Now, I don't really know what we accomplished other than we just given everyone permission to kind of just verbally just spew it out there. And I don't know what progress has been made. So having good boundaries to set to understand that, this is about their journey, not yours. That's some of mine.
Do you still have times where you're struggling?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And what are some of the interventions that you do for yourself? What works for you personally?
This is a good one because I was just talking about this recently. I had to cancel an event that I was struggling in, struggling at emotionally, was not in the best spot, was a momentary thing, was a kind of just a dip in the day. but I had to speak, and I did not feel the most honorable, authentic self. The last thing I want to do is cancel something. Last thing I want to do is cancel. I mean, that in and of itself caused a lot of guilt and shame for me. But on the other side of that, I knew if I couldn't show up, be my best version for a vulnerable population, that's the trick, a vulnerable population, they are looking to you for guidance, for inspiration, for mentorship, for trust. So if you don't feel like you can deliver that or show up for that, there's always tomorrow. And I'm learning that now in real time, to take a break, get my wits about me, and come back so I can be my best version to show that people. So that's one thing, is learning when to say no. Two is always getting your therapies, modalities, your self-care. It's got to be locked in. You got to lock it in and get it. It's not always going to be right, and it's the kind of this I've learned. It's ebb and flows, and it's
but for you, I'm talking for you personally. Like what
yeah,
what
that's what I mean. I mean, like, if I'm not doing the self-care, if I'm not going to my therapies, if I'm not treating myself, if I'm not putting the oxygen mask on first, I am not going to be the best peer support officer. Because what has happened in the past is, like 2019, 2020, when I was struggling, I would show up in these events, in these these peer support groups as a leader in the space, but almost, and I would tell my wife, like, I'm going to feel better when I come home from this. Like, this is going to help me too. Is it wrong to think that way? No, because like, I'm going to help somebody and they're helping them is going to help me too. In theory, there's nothing wrong with that. But was I also hoping to feel better about myself emotionally? Like, was that part of my therapy going there? I don't know. It got a little gray and messy there. So I just had good boundaries of knowing what the mission is, keeping focus on the why. So you're not showing up there expecting somebody who's vulnerable to kind of, you need a little help from them, just like you're going to, like, I'm here to help them and I'm going to get a little bit from them
I guess what I'm asking, Chad, is what are some of the self-care actions that you actually take to knock yourself out of a funk?
Breathing. I breathe a lot.
There we go.
I pray a lot. Spirituality is very close and important to me. So I talk to Jesus all day long. I'll talk to him after our session today. Breathing's a big deal. Like, I can't, somebody told me about the breathing exercise when I was a patrolman sitting in my car with anxiety. And I would sit in my police car doing these breathing exercises. And I laughed at them at first, and then it ended up becoming something that became a staple in my life, my routine. So breathing, praying.
Walk me through one of them.
So I'll do like the Calm app. Have you ever heard of the Calm app or Headspace? So they have guided breathing exercises on these apps. So Calm is great, CALM. And I'll just lay there on my couch, put the phone on my chest so I can feel the rise and fall. And they have these guided breathing. So with music, through somebody, a narrator, they will guide you through. Take a deep breath in, like box breathing on in a way. Take a deep breath in, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale, hold it for 4 seconds, deep breath in. And the 16-second regimen, you repeat over and over again. You only have to do it for me at least 5 or 10 minutes before my anxiety goes way down. My clarity comes way back. And it's like, all right, I got my wits about me. So for me, that helps tremendously. So breathing, praying, sharing my burdens with Jesus is a big thing that I've learned to do. Not having to take everything on my own, which is something I really struggle with. Like, I was the fixer, I was the cleaner, I was the preventer, I was the helper, yep. I was the doer, I was the fixer, the cleaner. Well, I probably already said that, but like, that's my mindset, how I viewed myself. And no, I'm none of those things. I can do all of those things, but I'm not those things. And I've learned that about myself. So now I slow it down. I'm the tortoise, not the hare. I have no desire to run 1,000,000 miles a minute. I can if need be. But this mindset of this hustle culture, I'm going to run, thinking that's going to make me successful. That's not true. And I had to learn that.
People running and they don't know where they're running to. And it's like a dog chasing a car. They don't know what to do when they catch it.
And then the car hits you and you're like in the middle of the road, struggling to get help. And you're wondering how I got here. I was the fastest dog. And now you're in a mobile dog. Yeah. How did that work for you? So you got to slow down.
Yeah, brother. I'm in the middle of a self-care right now. Things were getting foggy and dark, and I'm like, okay, I know what this is. And my wife is like, could you take some mushrooms already? And so I did. Psilocybin mushrooms are a really good intervention for me. But the most powerful intervention I've found so far, I'm in the middle of right now, is fasting. And the thing about the fasting is it gets you into ketosis. When I'm in ketosis, dude, like, I think clearly, I'm able to connect. That disconnected feeling is gone. I feel connected again. The sky is more blue. The clouds have a better edge to them. I'm more present. I'm more in the moment. The depression's just gone. I still have the suicidal thoughts that pop in, but they're weak and they're wispy. I can backhand them. I don't have them at all when I'm in ketosis. Like it's zero.
Wow.
And the thing I like about it is it costs you zero money, and it's always accessible, always accessible. You know, um, I'm in a funk. There's a suicidal thought. It's cloudy. I don't feel switched on. I'm feeling unmotivated and sluggish. Stop eating.
Mm.
Stop. Now get lots of water in you. Do a 24-hour fast. You will feel better. Like
Wow.
we're constantly poisoned by our diet, right? And so right now the diet that I'm on, I might be on forever because why have a roller coaster? I feel good right now. I'm not hungry. My belly's disappearing. The dad bod's getting is melting away. Told
Hey,
my wife I'm gonna keep going until I have a dick root. She's like, all right, that sounds good. But
I've never heard that term before. That is amazing. That is
but
incredible.
I'm doing got uh, eating day, not eating day, and I just so it's a 24-hour fast, and then eating day is just no breads, no starches, no carbs. It's just meat, cheese, and eggs, and some greens. Greens are fine. Maybe some lettuce. So more of a paleo. I'm not following any plan anymore because I'm not good at that. So meet people where they're at, like we've been saying. So I don't worry about what I can't do, right? Like the idea of having the keto cookbook, which is still a great idea, and just following and making these meals and the grocery shopping. I'm overwhelmed. Fuck
Yeah,
off, you
yeah.
know? So, all right. So that's not realistic. I'll feel like a failure if I try to follow the keto cookbook. All right. So what can I do? Never mind what I can't do. What can I do? Well, I can not eat for a day. Okay. You can do that. So I do that. And then the day I do eat, I just eliminate bread, pasta, all the wheats and whatnot. That's it. It's simple. And the body, my wife is so pissed off because she struggles, like she can't lose weight to save her life. Within like 4 days, my body was transforming.
Wow, wow.
you
That's
know,
crazy how quick that is.
it's unbelievable.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. The last time she was cooking, so we were both on the keto diet. She lost like 5 pounds in a month. I lost 25.
Wow.
And dad bod gone.
It's crazy how like the mind and the body all feed each other. They're all connected. It's crazy because you were basically doing it for, it sounds like, a mental and emotional health, and you're getting these physical health benefits, tremendous benefits.
Yeah, and it's also who am I? I mean, one of the things I teach constantly is IR theory, which is your identity is not your role, and really understanding the difference between identity and role. And I'm not even my body, but it's a part of me though, right? The body is the house for my soul,
Mm.
and you're supposed to treat your body like a temple, right? Well, that's because that's what it is. It's like we are a spirit driving a meat car, a meat vehicle, right? This meat bag is the only one we got. So you best take care of it, because if the meat bag isn't healthy, your spirit's not healthy. Mind, body, spirit connection. And it all goes together. So you got to look after all three. It's a unit. Oh, where'd you go, Chad Bruckner? We've lost Chad. Waiting for it to chat. Oh, your phone probably just timed out. You're back now.
Yeah, I'm back here. Yeah, I do got to jump off here in a couple. But I
Oh
still,
yeah, I forgot to ask you how much time you had set aside. That's all right, brother. We're about there anyway. If somebody wants to check out Chad Bruckner, who you are, what you're doing, what's going on, because you also do coaching for first responders, how do they get a hold of you?
yeah, my website. I'm trying to drive as much traffic through the website. You can sign up, contact me through the website. There's a contact form. Sign up for the newsletter. It's motivate motivate-change.com, motivate-change.com. And that you can see my services there, some of the options that I offer for training, offerings, speaking events, performance coaching, which I love and I'm passionate about. It's a great way to connect with me. I'm active on LinkedIn, if anyone's on LinkedIn, and Instagram. And then I have a YouTube channel that I'm very active in, all under my name, Chad Bruckner, Bruckner. So if you Google me there, my book's on Amazon. So just a little bit kind of all over the place, but I would love to connect.
What's the name of your book?
It's called The Holy Trinity of Successful and Healthy Police Organizations. And Trinity is my play on faith, improving leadership, culture, and wellness, because I believe you can't have a successful organization unless you have all three: great leadership, and those leaders
100%.
Have to be well, and then good culture.
All right. Stay on the line there, Chad. Thanks for this today.
No, man, Mark, thank you for having me on. This is a great conversation. We should do this again. This is great.
Yeah, I think we will.
Yeah.
You're listening to Operation Tango Romeo, the trauma recovery podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. If you would like to support me, support this mission, please click like, subscribe, and most importantly, share like the sugar bear, because sharing is caring.